Thank you, Lakshmi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being part of Finacle Conclave 2021, and a very warm welcome to this panel discussion on driving digital operational excellence in consumer banking. My name is Kapol Tandon, and I have the privilege of facilitating conversations with a distinguished set of panelists from banking industry. I have with me today Stephen White. Stephen is the Chief Operating Officer for Yorkshire Building Society, based out of UK. I have Miles Hillier. Miles is head of digital proposition at NetWest, and Jorge Ospina, Chief Technology Officer for Grupo Bank Colombia, one of the largest banks out of Colombia. Before I start, I request our listeners to feel free to ask questions during the session on the chat window. We will collate your questions and present them to our panelists during the Q&A segment of this discussion. As we all know, the pursuit of operational excellence is a continuous journey. A journey that demands concerted efforts across all parts of the organization, starting from the very top, which is your customer relationships, and goes very deep into the organization all the way down to the backend transaction processing. This need for operational excellence has multiple influencers, some of which are the pressure and the competitive nature of the new fintechs which are arriving on the horizon these days. It could very well be the evolving customer preferences and expectations. It could be optimizing your IT costs. And even regulatory and compliance oversight sometimes drive the need to basically improve on your operations. Today, we intend to discuss the influence of these factors on how to gain and improve on operational efficiencies under three broad themes. And the broad themes will be one on strategic alignment, under which we'll try and focus on impact of business models and how customer segmentation has changed, how the products and services are changing for financial institutions. The second broad theme will be around operations, primarily focusing on how to optimize and improve on the internal processes. And last, and in my opinion, probably the most important one is the influence of digital technologies on improving your operations within an organization. A lot of things which were initially not possible over the last few years, the technology has enabled us to do a lot more than a few years back. So let us kick off and let's start with Stephen. Stephen, with the very first theme on strategic alignment, how have you seen the business models changing over the years, especially in last 1.5 years post-COVID? And more importantly, how do you actually see these models evolving further in next few years?
Yeah, thank you. Well, certainly, I've been at Yorkshire Building Society in the UK for, 4 and a bit years. Prior to that, I was in Ireland for a couple of years on the board at AIB as COO. And prior to that, I spent time in Australia, nearly 6 years with National Australia Bank across Asia. And there's no doubt that the advent of digital over the last 10 years is changing the customer interaction and the customer expectations. It is quite different in each of the continents from my experience around the speed of it. But I do think that speeds became more uniform over the last 12 months with COVID. The number of customers that banks or building societies may have been challenged or struggled to encourage customers down the digital channels has increased rapidly with digital adoption during the pandemic. So I think across all customer segments, previously the sort of silver surfers generation may have been the more difficult generation to migrate onto your digital channels. I think we've seen an increase in that over the last 12 to 18 months. I do pause at that point and say, I still believe there is a role for face-to-face. I think the role of face-to-face is changing and will become more dynamic. And certainly I'm all for a phrase of digital within the branch. So I do believe there's a difference there. The younger generation, obviously we've seen a massive increase in the UK with the likes of Monzo, with the likes of Revolut, which have really changed the customer expectations. But we've not seen a huge amount of them become the first bank of their bank account. So it might be a subsidiary bank account and using it for the functionality. So I think the new entrants, from my perspective, have positively changed customer expectations without potentially having changed the banking market. So I think there's something in there. I do think the segments are wins of an area that we'll see. Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. So the joys of Zoom. But what I would say is that I think we'll continue to see more changes in the future of how customers interact across all of those channels. My final point, and then I'll pause, is around purpose. I think across all of the customer segments in the future, banking, building societies, corporate, retail, institutional, retail especially, customers are looking for some form of purpose. And at Yorkshire Building Society, we genuinely believe in real help for real lives. Building societies were created hundreds of years ago to help people save, to help other people buy a home. And I think consumers now are actually looking for what is the purpose of the organisation as our colleagues. So I'll pause on that point.
It's very interesting, and Stephen, it's I think you probably got it right. All this new digital transformation, the very first in the main bank account continues to be kind of physical in a certain way. But everything out from there on is kind of really increasing and improving on the digital aspects of things. So it's a very fair observation, at least for some time back. Moving on to Miles. Miles, just in continuation of the theme on the strategic alignment of business operations, I would just like to explore this whole idea of customer segmentation definitions over a period of time. There, say 5 years back, there used to be a definition of customer segmentations within the financial institutions. I just wanted to know from you, have you seen the segmentation definitions changing in this new digital age over the years? And if the answer is yes, then how have you seen them changing, one? And what have you seen as the engagement differentiators or changes in those segments in your experience?
Thanks, Kapil. Well, I'd probably start outside of retail banking. I know that's our natural inclination, or being in the financial services industry. But if you think about experience more generally and the shift we've seen towards digital, I think there are a number of indicators that we can take from consumer industries in general about that movement towards digital services and what's driving it. And if I think about the industry leaders, the people that have redefined the categories in which they operate, for me, they all have three things in common. One is how they've simplified their offering based on what was in the market previously. They've made it more convenient for customers to consume it. And then they've personalized that further. So whether it's the entertainment companies that we probably all use to try and select which series we next consume on the sofa in the evening, and taking the pain out of the process of browsing that back catalogue and actually recommending things for us based on what we've watched before, or indeed the album we listen to on our phones. All of those things really are underpinned by this sense of personalization. And I think in the retail banking context, we can take those themes of simplicity, personalization, and convenience and think about how they apply to our businesses. So rather than thinking about very broad segments, I think that notion is somewhat outdated now, and customers' expectations are being very much defined by what they see outside of banking, and that increasingly is a very personalized individual experience to them. And NatWest's an example of how we've tried to respond to that trend over the last 12 months, is introduce services into our mobile app, which give customers more insight on how to manage their money. So instead of a traditional statement-based view of their transactions, we've actually started to give them a categorized view of their spend. So how much of their money, for example, each month is going into eating out, or bills, or transport, and surface up insights on that money that would be difficult for them to do by themselves. And for me, that's where we can really start to differentiate within financial services. Think very much on a personal customer level and try and adapt our products and services to meet needs in that.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And I especially picked on that thought that customer segmentation, the definition by itself kind of seems passé now, because it's a segment of one going forward from here, most likely. So, Jorge, the another aspect of operational excellence is obviously rationalizing your products and services offerings within the organization. Now, for a very long time, the product and services were pretty drab and boring, right? There was not a whole lot of innovation for various reasons in banking. But over the last few years, because of these new drivers, new challengers, fintechs coming in, there is a kind of an explosion in terms of the product innovation and service innovation, which by itself leads to existing banks kind of adding on to their portfolio of products and services to compete or to meet expectations of a customer. So in this new age business model, how do you see banks can optimize their catalogs and catalog of products and services and still compete and stay relevant in the market?
Okay, Kapol, thank you so much for this invitation. I think the banking models, traditional banking models, are changing very hard in the last few years, but I think this is remaining changing a lot in the coming years. Today we have many competitors, new competitors in our business, like fintechs, telcos. Everybody wants to get some part of the financial services. For that, I think we have to work with these new competitors too. Maybe we make some partnership with them. Sometimes we bought some fintechs in order to offer a new services for our customers. But I think the idea to face this change in this area, we have to create more platforms, more ecosystems. We are working very hard in that because we have to offer our customers not only financial services, but we have also offered them other services that is allowed to create some ecosystems. For do that, we are working, for example, in Colombia. We create a very several ecosystems like mobility. For example, in our cities, we are suppose our customers something functionalities like maybe renting a bicycle or a car to move in a day in any city, or maybe suggest them how to get the one point to the other point. Other ecosystem that we are working on is in habitat, in real estate, and also we are working in payments, like facilitate our customers make some transaction to QR code. This is a huge business like right now in Colombia. And generally, I think we have to participate, create ecosystems, platforms, and maybe participate in some of these too. This is our vision in this change of model, the financial services. And also analytics is important for us because I think our customers right now, we have to attend them. Maybe our segmentation is one-to-one. We have with the information that we have with our customers, we have to face them with a good analytics and good information in order to offer better services. And also we have in our channels, we have to different the offer for our customer. We create a special application for the base of the pyramid of our people. It's called Bancolombia La Mano. It's an application that is free for our customers in order to offer loans and payments and accounts focused in that kind of customers. And then we have also application for our traditional bank, and offer also application for millennials with our new digital banking is called Neki. We face this customer with a special application for that people. And of course, For a small and medium business, we offer a special application too in order to segment our customers.
Great, Jorge, wonderful insights. So as I see this, basically you probably are approaching it in a two-pronged manner. One, you have kind of stood up your own bank in a bank, which is kind of digital in nature. And at the same time, you're using your existing infrastructure to generate an ecosystem, which at the end of the day can be used, your systems can be used as a platform, and you want to go and embed your services into the third parties or ecosystem outside. No, wonderful insights, Jorge. Thank you very much. See, even our experience with multiple customers over the time has been very similar. And we have seen that this explosion of new product and services offering, it has to be enabled by a backend engine which is flexible enough. Now, in our context, when we kind of studied and surveyed Finacle customers, we did see that they clearly showed 18 to 20% improvement in ability to offer more flexible, personalized product in a much faster timeline. So, Jorge, thank you for your inputs there. Let us move on to our next theme, which is basically smart processes. Stephen, again, coming back to you in today's context where digitization is on steroids, literally. We can argue and discuss what is true digitization, but everything has to be made digital, at least internally these days. How important it is to reimagine both internal and external processes, keeping customer in focus. I just want to hear your view, because there are a lot of places where banks, for them, digitization just means enabling it for web, and they really don't go and look at it end to end from a process perspective. So what are your views, Stephen, on that?
Listen, I think that's a very good point. Certainly our experience, we've done quite a lot of things in products and digitization and on steroid and processes over the last few years. We have closed our bank account in the last few years, so we are now focused on savings and mortgages. And that's due to a variety of reasons, the big banks, the ability to make money, the ability to make income, PSD2, etc. And also allows us to focus and really make sure that we give an outstanding service for savings and mortgages. We do have our own broker arm in mortgages as well through our Accords brand. The ability to review your processes, if I look at mortgages as an example, 4 years ago, our NPS on mortgages was -11. Okay, today it's +86. Okay, so it's probably the highest of any big bank or building society in the UK. We've won just about every 5-star awards going. The process improvements that we've made over mortgages over the last few years, yes, last year we put in a new mortgage system, but actually prior to that, all of the big improvements were actually done through people and process and not technology. So technology is absolutely an opportunity, and you need to look at your stability and process improvement. But actually, if you've not got the right culture and understand your customer journey, then you'll struggle. So I'll give you an example. We launched a new savings app last year, and in some of our tests and proof of concept, we put a lot of customer journey time into the opening of the account. But because the customer journey was not all the way through, the automatic reaction of the customer, whether that be on ID&V, identification, account opening, funding, etc., the customer did one of two things. They automatically phoned the branch, or they phoned the contact centre, or they visited the branch. And actually, if you don't have that full customer journey, then you can do anything you want if it's not seamless for the customer. So I think from a steroids perspective, I do think digitization of your processes, especially routine processes, is really, really important. I still believe there's a role for customer interaction. That might not be face-to-face, it might be through a chat box, it might be a channel, it might be through voice, or it might be face-to-face. But I certainly have a view that automating your routine processes and making sure what's left is really value added for A, the customer, but also B, the colleague. And, I read a stat in Gartner a few years ago, and it said by, a decade's time, so 6 or 7 years from now, they predicted there would be a 75% reduction in employees in the financial services sector globally, but a 50% increase with new roles. And that tells you about what they're expecting around the changing dynamic of roles. And that changing dynamic is to support the changing experience of customers. Customers now don't want to deal with you 9 to 5. They want to be able to deal with you 24/7. And your customer journeys have to be automated to provide that service. So certainly I think you'll see more of that in the future, but I think there's an opportunity to make sure that whatever business you're in, you make sure that you can provide a competitive advantage. Otherwise, you'll try to do a master of lots, but a master of none. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, true. No, and just picking up on your thought and your views on the automation. So Miles, as Stephen mentioned, right, there will be a whole lot of automation probably coming up in future. And I'm pretty sure a lot of it will be aided by analytics and embedded AI and all those things, primarily to both optimize, increase, and improve on customer experience, as well as bring down cost and operational inefficiencies. So what, in your view, is the best use of, say, data and analytics to improve operational excellence? So I know there are much broader connotations from a customer perspective, but my interest would be to hear from you primarily on the operational experience. And how do you actually go about doing that, improving or identifying a process, deploying your analytics and data related information and improve that scenario?
Thanks, Kapil. Actually, may just pick up with a point that Stephen made prior to answering that question directly. Really interesting observation around that shift in the types of skills that we require to pivot into this digitization. I think a really good example, actually, where I've seen that in practice within our organization is the development of our chatbot technology, where we've actually recruited and taken people from our call center environment who are used to talking to customers and answering the telephone, and retrain them in the skills of developing chatbot. Because although that's a more technical role, actually how you talk to customers, understanding their intent and serving up answers to them is a really core skill about designing those journeys well. So I really resonate the perspective there about how we're seeing this shift in the nature of work and the types of skills that are valuable going forward. Your specific question on operational excellence and how we drive that. Well, yeah, if you subscribe to the view, which I do, that increasingly experiences of interacting with brands and banks is very much defined by simplicity. And there's very few examples in my mind of going through manual processes which are particularly simple, convenient, or allow you to have some sort of personalized interaction with a bank. And so it's very, very important, clearly, from a customer experience point of view, that we are able to tackle that operational efficiency, because you're highly unlikely, in my view, to be able to deliver then ultimately an experience that you want. And so that's bad news for customer, but also it's bad news for the organization. Clearly, if you have processes that are heavily reliant on multiple handoffs, manual processing, there's inefficiency there, and that ultimately again flows through to customer. I mean, how do you go about doing this well and actually focus on it? I think it's hard, particularly again in an environment where pace is so important, where shipping code and done is better than perfect. Where those sort of mantras exist, then your ability to get your front to back processes right is sometimes challenged. But I think the way that we've tried to tackle it as an organization is to line up our teams to think very much in terms of journeys and service journeys front to back. So not just the team working in digital, making a beautiful front end web page, and then another team having to deal with the kind of manual interventions off the back of lots of demand being created by a beautiful front end experience. Really trying to drive front to back journey thinking across our domains, and therefore focusing on the journeys that are most likely to have the biggest impact to customers, the highest traffic, the increased level of frequency, and making those a more efficient front to back is probably where I would start.
Sure. Oh, thank you. Jorge, both Stephen and Miles, obviously, they believe very firmly that there's a day coming when there's a huge amount of automation getting into pretty much each part of the organization, right? Internal operations, customer interactions. And as Miles said, it's tough, right? So you already have existing systems and processes in place. How do you go about automating them? How do you actually identify and isolate the processes, get the right skilled people to go and execute something like this? So I just wanted to understand from where you stand, what do you think is a good strategy in case you are launching on or embarking on a program like this to automate the processes that you have? So what I'm trying to understand is, how do you prioritize? How do you isolate? How do you go and execute once you have decided that you want to go and tackle a certain process or a certain area within a bank?
Okay, for answer this question, we have to divide our strategy into parts. The first one is we have to create many robots. Our legacy system is for our back office operation, and instead in our branches, we implemented more than 200 processes with technology in order to automate this process. And we are working in a very special project for do that in the last 3 years. That process that improved allow us to have less people, improve our quality, improve our speed, improve our services with our internal and external customers. And this is the first part that we did in the last year. The second part is we create several customer journeys for our customers. We define customer journey for retail people, for small business and corporate business. We define several, I think it's around 15 journeys for our customers. And the last year we are implementing many improves in that journeys in order to avoid any friction with our customers. It's allowed to us to increase our sales on our services. I think this in this last year and today, the pandemic allow us to increase our journeys, our digital journeys, because the customer has to use them in order for the pandemic too. And the bank also increase our objectives to increase our digital journeys in order to offer better services for our customers. And I think it is the two parts that I face this really change in right now. And also, I think our team technology, we are working all our system and support for DevSecOps. This automation allows us to be more quality and improve our time to market. And also we define all the new system that we create is cloud first. I think it is the three things that we are doing today in order to improve our operations.
Sure. So thank you, Jorge. See, from our point of view as well within Finacle, and there are a lot of improvements which have happened in the product over the years, included embedded analytics, a huge amount of automation. And when we kind of study the benefits that our customers have seen, we saw primarily on the transaction cost itself about 16 to 18% of cost savings, primarily coming out of process optimization and integration across channels. Let us go and explore our third theme, which is the impact of technology on the operational experience. operational efficiencies. Stephen, being a decently large organization with distributed operations, obviously technology modernization is not a one-shot activity, right? It is a continuous modernization effort which goes on at a financial institution like yours. What are your views, some observations and best practices that you would like to share with our audience? Um, what have you seen this modernization presents itself in terms of challenge as well as opportunities?
Thank you. If I can just touch upon as well briefly your last question, around where would you start? Certainly from my perspective, I wouldn't automate any process until I'd enabled or improved the process, because otherwise you could be automating a whole load of rubbish. So you really have to optimize and improve the process and then automate it first of all. So that's certainly something that I would continually to look at. From a technology point of view, overall, whether it be a large international bank in Australia or in Ireland or now in the UK with the Building Society at Yorkshire, is that one of the biggest challenges when you are a historical organisation that goes back decades or hundreds of years is that you have some form of legacy. And that legacy IT touches all forms of your customer processes, whether that be to your batch process or to your real-time payments or to your customer transactions or authorizations, etc. And actually some of the challenges that your new digital technologies, whether it be open architecture or without getting into all the technical terms, is that you can often see these new technologies and they appear to be really simple and really easy to implement. The challenge is often not them, the challenge is actually your legacy IT. So linking your customer journeys to your new DX platform, perhaps to your old e-commerce platform, to how you authorize, they're often what I would call the hidden challenges and the hidden costs. And actually, if you don't fix your legacy, you just end up running more and more platforms and your legacy IT becomes more difficult. So one of the things from a technology perspective, certainly from my perspective, is that whether it be process automation or customer journeys or any form of technology, is that understanding your legacy is really, really important. And the challenge of understanding your legacy is that some of your new technologies coming in might be written in Python, and you might get 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds that are really excited to do that. Whereas your legacy IT is all COBOL in the main, and they're probably known by about 5 or 6 people in your organization who are all in the late 50s or 60s. And actually those legacy IT systems are still going to be around in 10, 20 years time. They might be simplified, they might be updated, etc. But understanding your legacy IT is so important for the future if you want to truly digitize your experience. Because you could digitize your experience at the front end and your back end could be cumbersome, slow, and undynamic for the future needs and demands of your customers. And until you fix your back end legacy, then you won't make much progress. The challenge of all of that is that the cost spent to do that is often not seen as value add from executives. And what they see is, well, actually, how much more income will I get from this or from customer benefits? Actually, what you're saying is, to get to that, I need to spend X million. Well, what am I getting for that X million? Nothing really, you're just bringing it up to date. And the business case of that and working with partners like yourself is a really, really important dimension to enabling you to improve that period of technology.
Sure, and I could see both Jorge and Miles. I'm sure they had a lot of thoughts and ideas running in their mind as you were speaking, Stephen. So Miles and Jorge, I would request you to kind of add in your thoughts as well, because I think both of you are pretty close to this whole thought process for continuous modernization of IT. So any input, suggestions from your side, best practices you would like to share?
Well, I think Stephen's talked about some really relevant areas for institutions like ours that have been around for a long time. And there's lots of good disruptive technologies out there. And I think it's really important just to be thoughtful about what problems are you looking to try and solve, and then work back from that into the technologies you need to actually make it happen. if I think about our organization, of course, we are in a constant cycle of trying to modernize and improve some of that legacy, whether that be the way our mobile apps are hosted and managed now in a cloud-based infrastructure versus something which would have been more physical on-premise tin, to the development of things like our chatbot technology, which again is using cloud and AI to improve the experience that we offer customers. So there's no doubt that there is a role for these new technologies to sit in alongside the legacy, which Stephen rightly points out, but being thoughtful about how you integrate those technologies and what problems they're actually going to solve for your organization rather than perhaps create new ones, I think is a really important part of that journey.
Sure, thank you. Jorge, any thoughts from your side on?
Oh, in general, I agree with that, the strategy that they have, but I think make some emphasis in our plan to migrate all of our application to the cloud. I think the cloud is a good opportunity to improve and change our system. We defined last year 3 years plan in order to migrate all our application to the cloud with AWS. And this plan also includes refactor and rewrite most our application in order to, in 3 years, we have all of our infrastructure in the cloud. I think it's the enable for us to compete with the fintechs and the other competitors that we have today.
Sure, thank you. So Jorge, again, a question for you, and Stephen, Miles, after Jorge, I would request you to kind of weigh in as well. And it's an interesting question. Now, Jorge, is it possible to have a truly digital operations end-to-end, right? So that's the first question. One, do you believe that is even possible? And if you believe not now or not in immediate future, what do you think will still stay manual? Or it's your view, no, we can pretty much change everything into a automated digital operations experience, and it's a possibility that can be achieved?
I truly believe that this is possible, but it's easy to say that, but it's very hard to do that. And I think we are working, for example, right now, with the last year we defined a project that we call Zero Operations. We started with that. Is our idea have this goal, but I think we have to make some steps in order to do that project. First of all, you have to take care of the operation people. Maybe you have to offer them other possibilities, because if you said they lost your job, maybe they don't collaborate in this project. But our first idea is in some parts of this project, maybe reskill the people, relocate them, and offer other option. I think the reskilling is a good option to offer that people in order to participate in this project. And second, this is a huge cultural change, because the people always in the bank thinking in offer services, but also have operation in the old history, the banks. But change this mind, we have to change the mind, the IT people, operation people too, and of course the business people. I think the cultural change is important to do that. And we are starting thinking in this kind of eliminate operation, especially in the journeys that with our customers. We started review that process in order to make all the process all digital. And I think is a a very challenging process. And I think maybe in the next year, maybe the question is if I can achieve the 100% eliminate our operation area or part of them. I think this is a good question, but I don't have the answer today. But our idea is work very hard in that in order to have zero operation in our operation area.
Sure. And Stephen, again, your views on this, and in addition to this, I would just like you to comment also on this whole notion of how to reset the culture, right, to further of the staff internally within an organization to drive operational efficiencies. But I would like to hear your views on can we achieve a truly digital operation first before we go to that?
I think the answer is absolutely categorically yes. If you are a brand new bank or building society, some of the names that I've mentioned earlier, you would obviously set up the business to be truly digital. That's what your starting would be. But if you're working in where Miles is or where I am, where you've got a historical legacy, could you truly do that? Well, it would take a lot of investment, and I won't repeat my points of legacy IT. I think there is one other dimension, even if the answer is yes, is actually what are your customer moments that really make a difference. So if you think about it, a couple of processes that I would highlight to you, would you ever really want to make them truly digital? So first one I would give you would be bereavement. So customer death, when you're dealing with a customer's death and the testate and the will and settling all the money, from my experience, those customers do not want voice. They do not want digital. They want to speak to someone, ideally face-to-face or over the phone. You could digitize the process. We've tried it. I've seen other organizations try it. Customers don't like it. Okay. The second one is mortgages. Now, if you have a mortgage and you've had a mortgage for 10, 20 years and you're fixed rate and your mortgage is maturing and you get sent an email from your bank or building society that says, pick a new rate, go on to the new rate, and it's a decent rate, and it's all a digital process, there's a good chance that digital process will work. If you are in your 20s and a first-time buyer and buying a mortgage for the very, very first time, the biggest financial transaction in your career, feedback tells us is that you want to have some form of human interaction. Now, that might be over the phone, it might be chat box, it might be face-to-face. So I do think your question of could you truly digitize? Yes, but you need to understand your customers' moments of truth, what really makes a difference. And that for me is something that's really on my mind is when you head into that area. On your second point around culture, I do think a creation of culture around employees thinking efficiently and productively is really, really important. I don't buy into the sort of 90s, 80s, early noughts as an example in the contact center where you were measuring within a kind of second of average call time for your employees. I think the biggest thing now as an example is how can you complete the customer's transaction at first point of contact resolution? And I think that whole culture of making sure your employees feel as if they've got an accountability and control. So some organizations, and I'm sure Miles has probably got some good examples, if you can give customers an interaction with an employee, whereas an employee has an element of accountability, whether that be compensation, whether that be approvals, is that culture of accountability to the employee creates an element of importance onto the customer. There's nothing worse than getting passed pillar to post across an organization. It frustrates the customer and it frustrates your employees. And creating a culture where employees have the training, the skills and accountability, then you get a joined up purpose to make a difference for your customer. That's the key from a culture perspective.
Excellent. So Miles, same two questions, right? One, do you think it's possible to have truly digital, and then the cultural part of aspect of the efficiencies, very quickly from your side?
No, sure. I mean, I think Stephen eloquently put it. The challenges there around it's possible, but I think you have to consider your customer base. So if you think of the reasons why perhaps neobanks and fintechs are able to do that, they broadly speaking have one channel, it's an app. They broadly speaking maybe have one product, and they broadly speaking have one customer base, which tends to be digital native. Now, if you think about the likes of a NatWest Group or a Yorkshire Building Society, which has so many years of heritage behind it, and therefore a hugely diverse full service banking offering like we provide, your ability to do that on all services is always going to be challenged. And I agree with Stephen that some of those interactions, given the nature of that full service provision, are best suited to a colleague versus digital. Having said all of that, clearly where you have opportunities, particularly with your processes which customers want to interact with you digitally in, if you're not optimizing your operational efficiency, then you're probably not able to deliver the slickness in process that you need to really win and engage those customers going forward. I think when it comes to culture, again, we touched on this perhaps a few occasions through today's session. It's not straightforward, particularly in a big organization, to consistently drive through that message of operational excellence and efficiency. And where you possibly can, obviously finding ways to reuse and sweat assets more than once in multiple parts of the group, rather than different people going off and doing different things. And that very much for me is a leadership challenge, and how you try and embed a thought process about reuse and efficiency, and heroing the best practice examples that you can find of where that's taking place. And you know, I can think of several, particularly in new technologies, where if you build once and use many, it makes so much more sense for the broader organization. So I think that's key for us going forward.
Sure. No, thank you, Miles. So with this, we come to our final round of discussion points. And what I would like to do is basically draw on your own personal experiences in terms of driving digital operational excellence within your organizations. So it would be great, starting with Stephen. Stephen, if you can share one idea or one program that you have been part of and want to share with the audience here. And then maybe Jorge will come to you, and Miles as well, just to get your first-hand personal experience in effectuating the operational experience that we've talked about in last 40 minutes.
Yeah, listen, you know, I won't go into the Spotify or the agile technologies and culture that everybody talks about. I'm sure we're all trialing those different things. And I'm sure we could all give lots of examples, and I could probably give you a sales pitch of everything that's went well in my career, but it's not an interview. What I would say is that culturally is that the most important thing that when you're doing digital is actually to not win fast, but to fail fast. And, you know, if you really try things quickly, is actually closing down something really quickly that's not working is actually a success. And actually creating that culture in an organization, you know, where it's Yuri or Miles in their organizations, you often have to prove business cases, you often have to prove milestones and NPVs and all those other exciting things, and rightly so, because it's corporate money. But what I would say is that creating that culture of digital transformation, optimization, process optimization, etc. For me, I'm not going to give you one particular example, I'm going to give you a theme. And that theme is that learn to create an environment where your colleagues and teams view failing as successful as being successful. Because if you can do that, then truly you'll start to create a culture. If you look at Yorkshire Building Society, you know, we're a small player in the UK, we're nowhere near as big as NatWest at Miles. I've came from a large international bank, and there's pros and cons on all sides of those organisations. What we're trying to do in Yorkshire Building Society is, because we're smaller, is to truly create that agility, and to truly create that agility in a small product set that can make a difference to customers. We can't compete in every single product, and we don't choose to. We want to be outstandingly good at savings and mortgages. And the example I gave you in NPS earlier on, of going from -11 to +83 on our mortgage and our Accord brand, is something that we're really, really proud of. But it wasn't just about technology, it was about people, and it was about process and technology, and look at them as a holistic package.
Wonderful, wonderful, Stephen. Thank you very much. And Jorge, again, some learnings from your experience. They'll be very useful for our audience here.
I think in our experience, I have a case that is important to share with the people. In Latin American countries, many of our citizens go to travel abroad in order to have a good life, and they have to send money to Colombia for your families. And in that case, in the past, the people had to go to the office, the money transfers agency in abroad, and they in order to send money to Colombia, and they take around several days from the money comes to those countries to Colombia, and the people in Colombia have to go to our branches in order to get the money. And in this case, we create APIs in order to offer that kind of companies, in order to offer these APIs to transfer immediately the money to Colombia. This is a biggest business in Colombia. It's around $4 billion by years are transferred from especially the US and Spain to Colombia. And Bancolombia has more than 50% participation in that business. This is a good example of how to improve our services for our customers. And when the people send the money, immediately with our people in Colombia has the money in your account here in Colombia. This is one of the best examples that we have the change the operation and give our customers a good services.
Thank you, Jorge. And again, in the interest of time, Miles, would love to hear from you and your experience and thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I'll try and be brief. Lots of possible examples I could share, but I think actually for me the last 12 months there's been some great examples of where capability and culture have really come to the fore to be able to help customers, and we've had to be operationally efficient in the way that we responded to COVID-19 and the crisis, support customers through that. So, if you think about the response in the UK, where we've had various different changes over that period on government policy, and an organisation like ours trying to support customers the best they can through that. If I think back as to how we've done it, a lot of that response has been in and around digital channels, because unfortunately we've been in a position where our branches and telephony centres weren't as always on as they would ordinarily be due to sickness and other operational challenges. And so creating a coronavirus hub, which was a first point of contact digitally for customers to understand all of the help and support the bank was putting in place for them, whether that be supporting them to make a payment or transfer money if they weren't familiar with using digital channels. Whether that be, unfortunately, for those customers in financial distress, looking to request a payment holiday on their commitments, whether that be a mortgage and a loan, working very closely with various teams to put in place digital application processes, RPA and automation, then to try and make sure that those were being led straight through into our systems to give customers the quickest possible response and the assurance that they need. And then building out the services beyond just that immediate crisis level of response into something a bit richer and deeper, and thinking about, unfortunately, bereavement process, how we can make that easier for customers to understand if they've been affected by unemployment. Again, what are the tools and capabilities that we had to support people through that journey? So I think that at the heart of all of that and what we've done over the last 12 months is making sure you have the right digital capabilities within your organizations to be able to respond quickly to customer need, and then ultimately culture and bringing together the people that's needed in the moment of crisis in which we've been to do that in the quickest possible fashion so we can support customers. So those examples, and I'm sure this group has got many of those over the last 12 months of where we've had to pivot and we've had to respond, have very much been in and around how do we do it quickly, how do we use the channels that we've got, and how do we make it operationally efficient.
With that, we come to the end of what has been a very stimulating discussion. Thank you to all the panelists for being part of this wonderful and insightful discussion. To all our attendees, I thank you for tuning into this session and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Do come back to view the session recording and feel free to share it with your colleagues who may benefit from this session as well. I hope you will stay tuned to Finacle Conclave and enjoy the excellent set of speakers and discussions lined up for you. Do check out the agenda on the events website for details. Goodbye and stay safe. Back to you, Lakshmi.